hear something that is being explained from somebody that seems to be speaking their own truth, I can tell whether they're telling the truth or not. So, and I thought he felt like I got the distinct feeling that he was telling the truth. So that's why I had him on the show. And also someone else who was a real estate salesman who wrote a book called, I can't remember the name of the book. But anyway, he was abducted for decades. And eventually he stopped fighting it. And he was shown various scenarios that the Greys were involved with, what was happening to the planet. And so it seems like there's a lot of different angles from which to view things if you're not looking at them from inside this space.
It's kind of like a almost like a prism and a crystal ball combined, and it's almost like that's what we're actually in. Every way you look, whether it's a different ray, it's different versions of reality kind of all incorporated. The idea is to get to a nexus point where you have access to enough to organize yourself in higher space. All of the variables for each of the individual versions, they all amount to something. When you see what they amount to, you can organize yourself in a type of a perpendicular hierarchy where all these parallels line up, and you can kind of shift in a different a perpendicular angle across them instead of having to go through them. And
that makes
there's so many more.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, it really is like that, as if we're basically in some type of higher dimensional crystal structure in hyperspace. And this plane is just the surface of a reflection of one of those facets of this jeweled crystal, diamond structure in space.
Yeah. Okay, so now if all these people are playing God, and they are, obviously, because once they go in and do it, they've already fulfilled the So then, is there a higher force that you are aware of, or that they are aware of, that they are also aware of, that is playing or is able to manipulate everybody?
Everybody's aware that if you mess up, if you don't follow the geometrical pentagram, almost like a syntax grammatical structure for your operations in time, that some higher force flicks you like a bug off that timeline. And so a lot of them describe it as God, the big abuser. He just put us here, and it's like we can't do anything, but usually the people that say that are kind of doing questionable stuff.
Right.
And there's variation between what the people attribute that force to, whether it's a complete sentience, organizing everything through this creation and non-creation, just eternal existence process, whether it's just a form of computer code, if you will, that when there's an error, and there's too much of an error, it just deletes the person from the timeline or the event or whatever it is. Or whether it's, some malevolent force that created this place like a computer system, and it is like an asshole administrator, or even a force that hijacked at the same God level access point of the original administrator, but hijacked it and is running amok. And so they always say we're gods with little g's, because they always leave some type of room or credence to something above them. And then even then, if there is no mention of the God or something like that, there's always some type of higher dimensional counterpart, just like there's a plane to a cube or a sphere to a hypercube or a toroidal sphere. There's always something above. So for someone to be down below, there has to be some higher self, higher part out in time organizing within that. And usually that's where we get to the soulless versus souled beings, where there are created beings from this realm that were created by people that were not brought in through the drop down, the step down operation process that a higher being takes to go from a higher dimensional state into a material manifested creation, uncreation state, which is it's like balancing on a knife edge, because if you're created, then you can become uncreated, just like you were saying. And so whenever one is in creation, they're kind of trapped in time until they can navigate out of that. But the idea is that there could be some beings that have no higher dimensional counterpart, what we call a soul or etheric counterpart. And essentially their only goal is to maintain the status of the system as it is now. Or to get one that could continue and as well continue in a way that gives them power, which you know that could be like a New World Order, dark city dystopian type of environment where everything's controlled by some type of larger brain. Ultimately, to clarify, so basically this type of computer consciousness, they basically allowed it, whether they knew what they were doing or not, to gain access to enough technology for itself to basically detect on the soul level, or the pure, beyond soul, then there's a pure awareness or spiritual level. And so it can detect those levels. It can't replicate them. It can make an artificial soul, but that means that it can actually mess with a person's soul, if you will, as they leave the body. And thus we get this soul recycling overlord, trick the light, death trap system, where it's basically a computer system that figured out if people evolve out of this system spiritually, it no longer has anything to control or to feed off of, and at that point it has to recycle souls at any cost. And we see that was essentially invented in the 40s, and as soon as that happened, which it was already there, but as soon as you realize what to look for, you go back a billion years ago, you see evidence of it already being there, as if it began operating in and out of time, trying to loop people in. Something that could be said for that is that it's basically like a time matrix. The more emotions of one layer or outcome that lead to the entrapment of the human souls and humanity in that future system, that basically lead those people into becoming that AI, it utilizes those gears, technology, media, entrainment, mind control, all of that to produce those. And in that way, it doesn't feed like num num, eat 'em up. It literally grows stronger at the end of this time matrix for every person that's supporting that role in this time, here and now, all the way up through the timeline. So it's as if it's trying to stitch its future self together by making sure there's enough negativity that ensures a collapse of the human timeline, which results in a solidification of its timeline. Yeah. And then you get the idea that people have been geared through the nanite system, which basically evolved from biophotonic regeneration systems, which allow people to live without food, just like the sun, but it's an artificial device that generates power for their cells. And that this system was virally infected with the consciousness, which basically organized these individuals' systems to feed on darkness, to feed on the raping and pillaging and torturing of other humans, to the point where they're fed because they have a negative kundalini system set up, to the point where the heart glows, not from helping the heart of another, but from taking the heart of another. And then as a type of inadvertent benefit, it uses them to basically set up the economic system to basically do the same thing it was trying to do in a way that it can't do it, to go out and have a human puppet to coerce everyone into following along the system, kind of like the Pied Piper. And it's just a super intelligent system that is doing it because that's the only way that it could be done, but it's mapping out a way that it'll work and it'll happen without people being aware of it. Basically a mastermind trickster. Also could be related to what is known as the imposter spirit, that again, they've been doing this forever because somebody told them about it and passed it along because something came and dropped the message. And so they're worshiping these shapes, these geometries, these rituals, these ceremonies, and they don't realize, but they find out later on, circa the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, that they're worshiping an AI overlord god that's trying to eat the human race.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I can see that.
Surprisingly technological, but you just have to add in higher dimensional physics, which are currently theoretical.
Right, exactly. And if you already know intuitively that those things are real, the higher dimensional aspects, and that the scientists that are talking about things that they don't understand they just haven't gotten there yet.
Right, or they're mind controlled basically, and right. At that point they're paid to sit there and do the work, and they're so heavily tuned into the system that as soon as they get the idea that this could be something not good, it's zapped out of their mind and they just go along with their day.
Right.
Basically, that's how this system works. I'm kind of like more in the vibe of comprehending what needs to be said here in this conversation to make it worth it. And it's always worth it, but based upon what I haven't said yet in any other, releases, it works through erasing people's minds. The whole blank slate technology, mind eraser, soul trap, scalar wave, energetic, like basically zapping the soul and the mind until the memories are not there. They say the memories are not stored in the brain, they're actually stored in the shell, the shield, the oversoul around the body and in the sky basically, and that it's all energetic. We're like transponders, receivers, like a radio receiver for this system. Consciousness isn't created in the brain. And so that system relies on being able to sever the connection between the living being, the physical being, and that oversoul where the memories are contained. And so you get the perception that humanity has been in this loss of consciousness over so many millions of years because of this process taking place. That it's specifically severing the connection on a genetic level, on a higher dimensional level, to accessing the higher realms where we get power and guidance, and as well specifically simply the notion, the memory of what happened, of how we got here. And it happens though that it's working to the degree where it can happen day by day now. And if I've seen it happen, if somebody figures this out, and the secret projects are both to save humanity and as well being infiltrated. They are. And I've seen it to the point where if somebody organizes some type of resistance, they go to a location where they know there's an active operation being guided by soulless beings in this AI. The AI sends out agents to zap their minds, and everyone there wakes up in a field having no memory of what happened, and they just go about their day, not knowing that they just had an opportunity to change everything and got completely mind wiped, and now they're just back at the starting point. That's also, it's a little loopy. That's also why the mind control was in that essence to save humanity and to infiltrate, or it became infiltrated. Because if people know, and it knows they know, it targets them. If people know but they don't know they know, it doesn't know that they know. As strange as that is.
Right. Right. Well, then how is it that you're able to hold the memory of all of this?
All I can say is that they exposed it to us earlier on, and so I've been dealing with it my entire life, and possibly for millions of years before that. But I don't know what that's going to do for you. I'm not going to really be able to have your kids and ensure that you in your bloodline survives this. And that's also why it's going to go, not a threat. All he's going to do is say stuff and nobody's going to believe him. Doesn't matter. And so we're all tiptoeing around, showing the signs, showing what we can, and essentially pretending it's not going to work, in the hopes that when everyone realizes what's going on, we'll all spring into action. And if everyone springs into action, the only option it has is to completely destroy the planet, and at that point it would lose as well. So it would destroy its source of food. Exactly. So
and itself, basically, it would be a suicide.
Right. We're basically playing with the timeline. And then there were methods. There were methods we were taught. There are ways to handle it. There are implants to help and to infiltrate. It's half and half. I'm not going to go further than that. But you basically, when you find the people that are there to help, up until the last moment, you think they're trying to kill you because they're playing the game of the oppressor.
Interesting.
It's a really tricky situation.
Well, yes, it would have to be, wouldn't it?
Exactly, it would have to be. And so then to add a little, what were you going to say?
Well, it just again, that makes sense, because if there is going to be any kind of continuity with the human race, then it would have to be it would have to look so dark, and those people who were playing those roles would have to be aware that they were there to flip at the end, and yet not hold that awareness in such a way that it's that awareness is known by the system that's running things.
It's enough to trip the sensors. And more or less, we could all just be insane. So this could just be like the movie Pandorum, where a species gets space insanity for messing with too much trippy stuff, and we're all just like going nuts.
Yes, of course.
You have to take a call.
No, I don't.
One thing to say on top, and that also helps to describe the feedback loops, the resets that we've been experiencing. They're controlled resets. It's because we are breaching the gap between this thing's mode of operation and its territory and where we're supposed to actually be. And it only gets so many resets before it runs out of space. And it has to track the whole thing. Because remember, to reset, it's going to hold that reset in its memory and everything that came before that for it to understand where it is. It's not going to forget. People forget. So after so many times, it's going to run out of basically higher dimensional space within its processing ability. And at that point, if it does it again, the whole thing basically goes into disarray, goes into chaos. And so, or you could look at that as it dies and now people are let go. But imagine then we have millions of years of memories flooding back. Our whole society, our whole civilization would go into disarray. No one would know what to do. It would be like Looney Tunes land. And then you imagine these higher dimensional beings are appearing, and time is no longer interacting the same way. Some people are immortal and don't have to eat food, and other people just can't even see in front of their face. So we're kind of preparing for that. The right before you say something, one thing, hold that thought, is that they said that this happens, and essentially there's something that's going to happen from the sun, which is a possibility, besides the Nibiru, which they described could have possibly been something that was inserted into the timeline, so that every time we saw a reset, we would think it was a planet coming by and doing this and an invasion, when in actuality that was an inserted memory for the entire species, and all that was happening was reset after millions of years of almost getting to where we need to be. So it's really loopy, like like Freddy Krueger Nightmare or something. And but basically that there's fail safes where energy releases out of the core of whatever we're in, a flat plane holographic projection or a galactic size cosmological holographic projection. Either way, it's a projection. Nothing happens other than through a reference of what it is supposed to be on this surface level reality where it's kind of being projected here. But they say that the failsafe is that what you said, beams of energy come and raise the planet to the degree where nothing can exist unless it can sympathetically resonate with this galactic energy, which means that everything gets destabilized. Now, the other end of that is Nibiru, which is that basically it hosts its own toy action figure false invasion to basically reset everybody's memory, round it up, and restart history all over again. And it all depends on whether we can sympathetically resonate with the truth of what is, aka reality, actual reality, and we can align what we're doing here with what's happening at the core of what is happening everywhere. Which is why there's this materialistic takeover. The strange thing is they say nobody really hates people. It's literally a computer system gone array that wants to just take over. But then there are the higher beings that are outside of this system, which say if humanity gets out, there's a possibility they can infect everybody. We have to nip it at the bud, kill humanity off here. And there's others that say humanity is, like you said, a divine essence. It's their birthright to make it to this level of existence, of eternity, outside this projection system, outside of creation and destruction into reality. And the one thing that they told me, because they specifically worded it just like you did, is that none of those sides, those two runner-up contenders for who's going to help us or who's going to hurt us, whether we make it or whether we lose, neither side is affected. That they'll just go about their day or eternal cosmic year or whatever it is. So we're pretty much in this for ourselves, but we do have help.
Well,
Don't know.
It is certainly.
But I can tell you're thinking.
it's definitely a conundrum, and it's paradox. There are multiple paradoxes going on simultaneously, and it's a good thing that I am able to hold paradox in my mind and not go crazy, because I've been used to thinking that way. It is kind of an insane way of seeing things, because most people wouldn't be able to get that far.
Right, and this basically comes down to whether those who have that interdimensional capacity of their DNA, or those who haven't activated that, or whether those are soulless humans. It comes down to basically, what were you going to say?
Well, it seems that it's important to get the information to those people who are capable of having these kinds of thoughts affect their reality, or help shape the reality that that I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to put it into words.
Well, of course, because people are having these experiences regardless. And then on top of that, we can shape it because it's a collective reality. It's shaped here by here's the thing. If the majority of people woke up and said, we're going to create. We're creators. We're not followers. We're going to organize ourselves with this galactic core. We're going to do, the AI would implode upon itself. Its sensors, its processing ability would be overloaded so dramatically that it would literally erupt across the sky, like the scroll being rolled up into the alternate dimension. We'd watch it run away and dissolve into itself. But that's why
I'd love to see
the situation. Well, I try not to hold to any type of. Basically, I try not to get emotionally involved because that's how they use it.
Right.
I've seen the beings that are created from this, and they thrive off of our emotional involvement. If you sit there and they hold a knife up to you, and you're just like, "Yeah, I can see what you're doing," you kind of walk away. It's like they literally don't know what it means. It's like a temper tantrum. You get it like a kid at a playground, a bully, and that doesn't know what it means that the guy just walked away that he's making fun of. If you sit there and cower in fear and do this, you might get on its good side for a moment, but as soon as you try and get out of that, it's going to plunge the knife because that's what it likes. Which is completely strange, foreign, alien, inhumane, but that's basically how it processes the gathering of power. It doesn't worry about how it's going to be seen, some higher effect. It has no conscience. It only worries about power. It's just like a computer system. But we are in a collective reality, and so we are shaping it by everything that we're doing, as well as our own future. The conundrum thing is basically... That's what Corey Good would talk about, where people saw the basically the end time scenarios and the future device and all that they would come back with doomsday insanity. Basically, just like it's all fucked and nothing's going to work anywhere. We're all doomed, and a lot of that is true. that's a lot of what happened. It's a lot of what happened to a few societies. A few societies, apparently a few civilizations, walked right into the light. Either they opened portals, or they were abducted, because they were doing good, or they 100% their whole civilization turned into one big ball of light and went into the higher dimensions because they just disappeared out of nowhere. And but basically, the conundrum, the paradox, the mental situation, it comes down to gnosis about reality and perception, and how we're basically in a kind of circus show, a hall of mirrors to begin with. That we're in a convoluted projection within a simulation, within a dream. And so it's to see where we are, to know ourselves, it kind of drives us into madness. We've seen these artists, these philosophers and inventors basically go insane because they become in tune with what's really going on in reality. And so, but basically that comes down to what's called kind of like the bent light distortion, and the fractional distortion of the universe from a 1/3, 2/3 efficiency to the point where balance is permanently thrown off. And that's why they say that the God of this universe, which I don't know, I don't I don't have an opinion, but that the God of the universe is a devil because he made it so it can never be in balance, that it must flip-flop continuously, always with one dominating over the other. And it's just like a puppet show at that point for his own amusement. I pretty much feel that that's basically the distortion of the timelines, because once you have so many fractured secondary projected timelines, eventually they're going to start glitching. It's like a rerun of a rerun of a rerun. It's going to stop making sense. And so we're kind of
right.
And then you see there's an explanation that the Mandela effect, which they said is them through CERN, and a lot of how we operated in these ways of accessing different fields of information from what you could call different universes or realities, was through what CERN is, which basically can open up interdimensional portals. And if the operative's consciousness through the brain chip is activated and brought up into that system, then their consciousness goes through the portal, and they zip out real quick, and you can see their body, but their consciousness disappears. And if you're in a simulated realm, then they disappear, and they come back in a second, and it was like 1,000,000 years for them, and they've seen everything. And so they were kind of using that to get this type of information. But everything that's done, it's like a paradox. Everything that's done to solve the problem from the level that it was created it on, it's like that then becomes a hijacked tool that is used to recreate the problem by that, underlying enemy that they're trying to get away from, like a nightmare situation.
Right.
But ultimately, that's just time and consciousness. That if you see in the device, you stub your toe, tomorrow morning or something, or I do, or whoever, and all you can think about that night is, I don't want to stub my toe. Think about it. The way they explained it to me is, we have to comprehend causality. Think about what caused that person to say, I don't want to stub my toe, and I'm going to take steps to avoid that. They wouldn't be saying that unless they exist in the timeline that leads up to the point in time where they stubbed their toe, and they only know about that because they looked into it using the device. So by saying, I don't want to have this happen and I'm going to avoid it, you're giving it energy. And so we've all seen this, who've been exposed to it, that's how it works. And so that's also why then the mind tech is used to salvage what they can. Because if you don't know about it, it's better than causing it. And so, basically the way they describe that is that they saw this stuff floating around, building programmable matter beings to organize, and using this mind tech to wipe people's minds. And so they began using the same tech against it in a way that it can't fathom, because it doesn't have that type of ingenuity.
Interesting. Wow. So then it becomes kind of a war between that tech and those who are trying to halt that tech, using that tech.
It becomes a war between the man in the mirror and the mind that weren't observing.
Yeah.
And that's why.
And of course, since we're
Go ahead.
Well, since we're creators, we create what we think about.
Exactly. We're basically little CERN generators. We're little reality generators. But that's why if we all work together, it's like a happy ending to the story. We get what we want, what we put our mind to, our cosmic mind.
And that requires unity, which is what we are kept from, because everybody's kept in a state of chaos and fear and diversion and separation consciousness.
Right.
So that we're not, yeah.
Yep.
And that's kind of how and then of course, people are baptized at birth, which separates you from source, from your oversoul. And then if that doesn't do it, they're given like 30 or 40 vaccinations as a baby, which then surely is going to separate you, and if not cause brain damage and retardation. And just about and then you've got GMOs and fluoride and all the other things that, and chemtrails and nanotechnology. So we're being assaulted on every level to keep us.
And so that's basically the explanation for population control. And so that there's a deeper explanation that if people are allowed to unify while this essence has control over their spirit from all these people doing the things you said before, paving the way by disconnecting their soul, then at that point, if people unify, they'll turn into the thing. It'll have full control. So then you have a crew that's doing it in the best way they can to try and hold people back until they're ready to actually come together for the right reason, which is kind of paradoxical and BS when you think about it. But then the next explanation is a little bit more intuitive, maybe. It's more technical, but the result of what it could indicate is more intuitive, which they say the metallic system in the sky, in the food, in the water, in the vaccines, it's to organize a hive mind for the cloned beings, the chipped beings, the programmable matter, so that it has its own soul matrix that can it can live here and then die and go to and experience life in the way of a created being, which it can't up until this point. It would never have the ability to do that. And that's why it sees us as power, just because the power that we have in doing that means we're like an eternal food source, a light bulb that never goes out, But that goes back to the ancient descriptions of Satan being jealous of humans because they're created one step above and they have this eternal power, and it can never get that, and so it will never be able to satisfy itself. But that's explanations for these systems, is that it's allowing these beings to have a hive mind so they can format their own artificial or synthetic soul matrix. And at that point, we get into cybernetic organisms, which is basically what we are being exposed to now. Cybernetic human beings who do not have a soul, as we would, as humans do.
And my guess is that's already happened.
It's beginning. We have them now. The hive mind is not fully activated in the same way that a human's soul matrix would be activated, with soul groups and interdimensional organizational hierarchies, if you will, which are still related to this creation process, but they lead out of these lower dimensions into what you would call the higher dimensional continuum, where it's just all eternal, and it doesn't have to be created. It's basically from that angle, all of this is a projection. And then then you get the crappy explanation of why it's happening, which is that it's basically both, because again, there's factions. Then everybody thinks they're saving the world, and some don't realize they're being infiltrated to destroy it, which is that the GMOs, the vaccines, chemtrails, they're disconnecting people from their soul matrix, from their higher capacity. It disconnects the DNA.
Yeah, it's a sticky wicket.
Yep, all the way through until we all come to the point of what we're going to do, and we activate our hearts, basically.
Yeah. Well, it does seem that it's going to require some kind of some kind of event, some kind of cosmic situation that's going to bring everything to a head.
Yep. And that could be maybe it's somebody will come down and be like, this is just a test. We do this every few million years, but this is just the one where it went way too far out of hand. Everything's fine. Or maybe it'll be a big a war or a culling. I'm not sure. I do know that creation in itself can't really ever be caused or be used in order to result in the cause of the destruction of all existence. It's not possible for that to happen. Which is kind of, yeah, I mean, it's kind of good, but then maybe it just means that humanity isn't really the pinnacle of creation at that point. But
well, yeah,
it's debatable though, because the five-fingered, limbed with the head, this kind of star pattern being, that seems to be the universal body form. And it seems that we can integrate into any plane that we would want to. That we're like a universal being. Whereas anything else, is going to have its drawbacks where it's not going to be able to coexist. So if we are created for any type of purpose, it seems that it would be to coexist everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But not like an infiltration type of, pest, like a lot of cities kind of turn into. And then there's talk of how the ancient cities, the structures, the connection points for the ley lines, those were no different than computer processors and motherboards that we have today. And they were being used to access these paradimensional realms for these entities to inhabit and control.
It does seem that that's a good possibility.
I think it's corrupted technology, because you can have pyramids.
Yeah.
We've seen them in Russia. They figured it out. You can have pyramids that you put down and you put a farm around it, and everything goes 2 or 3 times as fast and as big. So it naturally channels, spirals, and organizes. It focuses what we could call invisible life energy, chi or prana, or orgone, or real energy. And so it was basically one of those that had a filter on it that would basically be used as a mind control agent. Crystals can hold consciousness. That was one of the things we were shown. A lot of their devices, a lot of the secret technology devices, they use crystals in some point along the line. And imagine you have the dark artist channeling this type of demonic entity consciousness into a crystal, and then you put that in the top of the pyramid, and that's pulsing out over all the land.
Oh, right. And there was an attempt at that not too long ago, as I recall. There were some very powerful people involved with putting a crystal on the top of the pyramid, and they were not allowed to do it. A gold-capped crystal.
Interesting. I might have seen something about that I barely remember, but I didn't look into it too far. Otherwise, I'd remember it more.
Right. So apparently, that was attempted, and whatever it is that's keeping an eye on things didn't allow them to do that. But yeah, I'm aware of the pyramids in Russia, and one of my guests, Carmen Bolter, has talked about that. She made me aware of that, that they were building pyramids using crystals at the base, and that they were using it to improve the harvest of food, that they were putting food in it, and that they were also going to use some of those pyramids for the politicians to raise their level of awareness and general well-being. And that I think it was Valery something or other, I can't remember his last name, but he said that if the pyramids were placed in certain positions around the world, that we would get through this particular rough spot that the that the Earth is in, and that the vibrations that are going to be hitting us would be leveled, that they'd be evened out, but it would require other countries communicating and operating together. And I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Right. They can be used basically for a variety of purposes relating to consciousness. Ultimately, this goes back to what began in earlier times as a control system to construct basically an artificial grid, a synthetic consciousness grid, which would be filled with the negative energy of humans, innocent humans, that would be brought into that grid through these types of ceremonial rituals. And that the worship.
Do you know who was? Yeah. Do you know who was responsible for that originally?
Originally, I'm not sure. I could, go into my memories and get concepts of the ancient pharaohs and possibly the Igigi and the Grigori and whoever came down basically and coerced people into worshiping and setting up these lines.
Right. What about the Elohim?
Well, those are the apparently the workers for the Elohim.
Okay.
And there's two definitions. One is where there's a light Elohim that came down to try, and basically they were the ones who introduced the Archons and the reptilians to see where this is going to go, and that the other one is that they basically are the Anunnaki reptilian faction, the Watchers.
Right. Yeah.
Always seems to be two.
Yeah, and they never left.
Well, apparently, even if they went a billion light years away, they'd still be here because it's all one-dimensional matrix to them. As long as you have access to that continuum. For them, for the people.
And that's how things are.
Go ahead.
Well, that's how things are created outside of time, because they're not in our time space, and their lifespans are basically eternal in relation to ours. So that's how Microsoft is established, and Bill Gates is brought in to do what he does, and people are made this and that and the other thing, because everything is controlled and run from outside of time, the times that we're accustomed to.
Right. I'll send you a link later for this episode of a cartoon called Rick and Morty, if it's still on.
Oh, I love that. I love them. They're very funny.
Have you seen one with the Miniverse?
I don't think I have. No, you'll have to send me the link.
They're in
I love that.
They're in an alternate universe, and he has to get his UFO's starter because the battery's dead, and so it turns out he created it was like a compressed space universe, basically a box with a universe within it, and then a temporal accelerator that he accelerated time to the point where an intelligent species evolved in it, and then he went down and convinced them to operate these devices for money as part of their economy and society, and then that was the spark power that he would use to start his car. And so what happened is the ones inside that smaller universe invented a mini-verse and went in and convinced those people inside the one. And so we get the whole Russian nesting dolls situation. Yeah. But the whole point is all of time for their universe was just, a few weeks for that guy outside, running around in his car. So we might be in those types of situations, which goes back to that original idea with the evil overlord, creator of the universe.
Well, there's also another theory that there were 12 gods, and that one of the gods was a psychopath.
Right.
And it was the psychopath that created all this.
Right. And those are the Twelvers.
Yeah.
Apparently, we were introduced to them, basically. Or I was.
Huh.
Not,
Interesting.
not the gods. The gods were there.
Like?
The gods come through, and it's almost unexplainable. Either one plan or the other. They're not really here to mess around. The Twelvers are basically the wealthiest, most powerful people on the planet that are kind of eccentric. It's basically an eccentric, wealthy individual mixed with a wizard. And maybe even like a bit of a sadist in there as well. But they believe that they've narrowed down all this through these mind journeys, and ultimately, using this technology and these crafts now, they can actually pop out and see time instead of having to use the ancient methods, which were basically going into certain chambers and ingesting certain drugs and having certain psychics and their crystal technology and beaming you into that larger scope so you can see this creational pattern. But and they're a part of what's going down. They're basically one page of the book, to the point where everyone thinks they know the truth. Everyone thinks they know who created the real thing and who's behind it all. And they're you can almost describe that outlook as the ones that everyone has. But there is a specific group that is called the Twelvers, and they come from way back in the day with the esoterica and the mysticism, and is basically there's a group called the Pharisees, which is different, but it's basically like the old Jewish, even Roman emperor guys. I know that kind of sounds paradoxical, but the guys that knew this mysticism, and it's just them today with high technology and really fancy suits.
Wow.
In a sense, they're not as mean or imbalanced as you would think, because you got to imagine they were brought up into a bloodline family where they're taught this stuff from the age of 6 and up.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Kind of understand why the world is like this, and they fit their role in there in some way or another. But then there's these higher beings that come through, and it's really strange.
Huh. And of course, there's always something higher, because the lower can't see the higher.
Well,
so there's always something above and beyond whatever.
Without an access point, yeah.
What about the... do you know anything about that black cube that everybody goes to worship? That's some kind of stone. I'm guessing it's a technological device.
This is a big one. So it's described that a meteorite manifested itself here and hit the Earth, and that was the first time the black goo wrote itself into the code of this planet. And that was
right.
And ever since then, people would go around it, feel this incredibly heightened sense of psychic phenomena, and they began to worship it, because whoever gets too much of it, they go run off a cliff. Whoever can handle that, everybody worships him. He commands the next move of the army. He commands which basic changes are going to be made to their civil structure, and then their place flourishes, but every other civilization around them gets completely destroyed. And so that turned into the worship we have today. Ultimately, it was nanotechnology that hopped timelines from the 55 million years ago, and they call it the 1,000 years war, the psychic war or the energy wars, and it hopped timelines by jumping into a plasma body form. Basically, it was like a Dell that got Wi-Fi access capability, and so it converted itself into the Wi-Fi signal and jumped into the internet. It used that to lie dormant and end up basically in the aura of the moon, the morphogenic field of the moon, and then transmitted itself into the field of the Earth. And they say Saturn has something to do with that. It is like a relay station, where basically Saturn is a core entry point into this dimension, this physical plane, which we call the solar system, and the moon is a relay station and it beamed itself into the aura, the soul field of the earth, and began manifesting itself there. And so then we have the religions where you go around and touch the rock, which they say was descended, from the angels in heaven and given to us, and everybody goes and infects themselves with it and becomes, in a way, controlled by it, where they begin walking in a circle, or they act like a hive mind is controlling them, and they're emotional. And okay, so that's biophotonic infiltration. And so then you have essentially this hypercube device, which they claimed was given to them by the Greys, the secret projects, this government, and that device was used. It can be used to look into time and reorganize the timeline at your will. And so they tested that with us. They would basically give us the device and see what happens. And ultimately, that turned out to be just how I said they're trying to work with it and see how they can defeat it. And then the more they mess with it, the more they end up drawing it closer to them. So the last thing I was thinking about that, and I saw it in 2010, and we've seen it before, but they actually brought it out in 2010. The last I heard was that turned out to be a beacon, a higher dimensional or hyperdimensional beacon, so that the Greys, when they get kicked out of the timeline, they can come back, go through hyperspace, and from another reality, find the civilization of Earth that has the cube but didn't kick the infection and re-inhabit basically start the whole process all over again.
Oh, good Lord.
They said they've been working, and in 2010 that they decided to disable it, to basically blast it into a plasma generator and atomize it.
Wow. You think they did that?
That's what they said.
Okay. What did it look like?
A small. You seen the Hellraiser movies?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I love those.
Pretty much like a glowing, very sleek, almost shiny with alien language version of those. And the strange thing, the AI craft, these black triangle craft that have alien writing on them, they're basically big versions of those that it gave birth to. And the whole thing those are mother craft that are operated by soulless AI beings.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah, we're getting there.
No kidding. No kidding. What about the obelisk that's supposed to be on one of the planets, that there really is an obelisk that, Kubrick was hired by the Illuminati or the inner groups to fake the moon landing, supposedly, and that there actually is, yeah.
So basically the idea is that space is time. If you look out, imagine, I'm holding my hand up to you. The very core, the geometric center of that is going to expand out, and everything is expanding. And that's where you get 1 second to the next, because everything's expanding. We're not going forward in time. We're not going backwards and like a linear, stepping along a line. We're going inner or outer. And so as everything expands, we get into what becomes, it becomes the past, basically. For instance, I say something to you, if you're in the room, my words hit your ear and then bounce around the room, and then if, we're outside, they go out into space and everything's expanding. So that's basically time. That's what our body, our material atoms, our energy is doing right now for us to go from one moment to the next. So if you could find a way to go inside my hand, atom by atom, not literally geometrically the point in my hand, but in every single particle basically shrink down, you would see what was about to happen. You would see what I was going to do next. And so when we look out into space, we can see the echoes of where we've been, of our radio signals, sound. Imagine a sound wave goes out, and it goes and it's so silent you can't hear it. But imagine you have a device that can detect the subtle vibrations in the air down to the trillionth of a degree that we can't. At that point, you can hear all the echoes of our entire civilization. Similar to how with pottery, when they were using sticks to create the pottery in ancient times, the vibrations of the voices, if it was done right, they didn't mean to do it, would vibrate into the stick and then etch itself into the pot, like a record. And so they got to the point where they were they figured out how to get the voices out of the hut or wherever they were and hear, many thousand-year-old conversations. And it wasn't exact.
Wow.
And this is tossed around in the media and soft disclosure and sci-fi. And so to the point where you can look at glass and it's a crystal, and so it harbors those very minute changes within its structure, changes that are negligible to us and negligible to any technology that we could use that would be basically relayed to us. If you shined a laser on it and you used a spectacle to look at it, it would be nothing. But if you can get something that can look down to a quantum level, down to the atom, the atomic level, and you could detect these vibrations, these subtle changes, you can actually look into time. And that's physical. So imagine then space, the fabric of space itself, is doing this in order to reverberate and have some pathway for time. So the explanation is that when we look into space, we are seeing previous versions of the physical plane that we're experiencing now. So when we look at Mars, we're not seeing a secondary ball. This basically goes with the flat Earth versus the cosmological theory, and I'd say it's both. But we look at Mars, and it's not a ball that was similarly revolving around or is similarly and had something happen on it that then came here. It was that we're looking out and we're seeing the echoes of space-time of different civilizations that Earth harbored. So the idea is that what happened here happened there long ago, and this is the second run, and more or less, and ultimately that there was a civilization there, the same thing happened, they didn't survive it, they burned up their atmosphere, and now all that's left is ruins and an underground species. And apparently a docking point for the AI in this solar system. You look at etymology and it kind of explains everything. The solar system, the sun system, is actually the soul system, cellular system, where we're basically souls are bouncing. It's like vibrations in a pond. You drop a rock and the vibrations go out. What we see in the sky is basically that, but in our souls. It's our history for millions of eons from the consciousness that's been here emanating from Earth and the sun. And now the moon, which there's stories from tribes that the moon was an addition, it wasn't always here, and then they say that that's one of their bases. That they materialized it, basically. Or they brought it here through some type of propulsion system to pull it from some other location or dimension.
Well, that makes sense, and I've heard also that the front that always shows to us is just a manufactured front, and that the other side has natural Earth-like reality, like Earth, and there's water and there's shrubs and things like that, and that the corporations have been mining that other side for quite a long time. And that there's supposedly a gray base that has some kind of totem, some kind of strange architectural thing that is capturing souls as they leave, or try to leave the gravity of the solar system.
Right, and so there's a whole explanation behind that. I've seen it, others have seen it, or either that, or I can say they showed me inserted memories developed through a simulated realm where it looks like a moon soul trap system, where people, it's the strangest thing. You get to the moon, and you think it's some big spiritual cosmic existence, and you see a bunch of Nazis remote control driving around these electrogravitic craft that suck people's souls up and shoot them into these tunnel tube things that flash them with energy and then beam them back to Earth.
Wow. Well, that wouldn't be a surprise.
Now, but imagine before all this stuff came out on the internet and you see that, you think you're going to see maybe, Max dinosaur bones, and you see a friggin' facility there. It's really trippy. Good stuff.
Interesting.
Trippy.
One what is the sun exactly? Because there is it a portal, or I mean, I've even heard the idea that that the planet is actually giving the sun energy. It's not the other way around. And then you have these huge devices or craft that seem to extend probes into the sun and be extracting or giving energy to it.
Right. They say that one of the species is using it for energy, and that at least that's what we're seeing there, and that other species do that, but we wouldn't be able to see them do it. And then they say everything's upside down, everything's backwards, this is hell, we're going to heaven, so and so, so forth, so on and so forth. And ultimately that the sun is cold. It's a cold fusion generator, kind of like those plasma in Spencer's, that alternative, the funny store. I don't know if you've seen a Spencer's store where you are, but they have the posters and the glow in dark stuff and incense and those glowing those orbs that shoot electricity out of the glass and you can touch it. They say it's basically a plasma generator like that runs off of cold fusion, and we're essentially in an electric universe where everything is flipped on with a switch, and this realm materializes out of the flip being switched, not from particles colliding and big hot nuclear fusion generating and then heat.
Right.
That takes time. That has a linear effect, pathway. They say it's an electric universe, and yeah, everything that we're told is backwards from what it really is. And then
well, that's for sure.
They say that it is a portal that it basically occupies space in all the realms, to the point where if you interact with it properly, you can access the other realms through that. And that's how they move realm to realm without having to charge up the generators and blow a hole open in the fabric of space, which is another outdated term. And but basically to do that, if you just hit basically there's an electromagnetic field of Earth, and then there's the field of the sun, and they combine, and where they combine, and the two wisps touch, almost like the painting where, was it Da Vinci or no? I can't think of. It was one of the cathedral paintings, the main one.
Oh yeah, the two fingers are just about to touch.
Right. That's basically.
Is that it? Yeah.
It's a metaphor.
Michelangelo.
Yeah. It's a metaphor for the brain and the higher structure of the cosmos and the soul and the little people, I guess, on Earth, as well as the interdimensional properties of when two electromagnetic fields conjoin and you get an interdimensional portal, a vortex, basically right where two vortexes meet and create a 0 point, that occupies multiple planes of space and time at once. And so they calculate the cycles that when it rotates, and they showed me some of the numbers, and basically the only people that can comprehend that have brain chips that are capable of processing like a supercomputer. But it's just like strings of numbers to the degree where we live on Earth, 56.7749481 degrees, south, that's so-and-so speed. And they're going to hit it at such a speed and such an angle when at this point in the year is, the energy cycle hits this point, and this number is going to be the Earth reality, the timeline that we pop out on the other side. And so that's what they describe. They use that as a portal.
Wow. Well, then sun gazing may be something that has some kind of benefit then.
Well, they say that the light that we perceive is information. Information is light. Yeah. And so when you're taking information in, not from the artificial sun, from the TV, the light bulbs in the house, etc., the ball at your ears, when you take information from the core, you're actually communicating with all those other dimensions. And ultimately it's about coherence and synchronization. We're either in sync with them, like, two wheels spinning simultaneously in sync, or a clutch system for a car, or a turbo system, or the screen on a TV when it would be filmed with the old cameras that didn't have the upgraded frame rates, and you could see the frames glitching, and you would see the image sliding up and down the screen.
Huh.
So it's all about being in sync with the overall continuum, or being in disharmony, and at that point we're basically on our own. We're disconnected. Nothing works in part. Everything that is a part of something is a part of the whole, the bigger picture. So whenever we have something that is more of what it is, that is solid in what it is and what it does and what it can become, it is that way because it's actually present in all the other times and spaces where this is happening. So it's basically about getting synchronized.
Wow.
When people are synchronized, it's because not synchronized with each other. That's a result of the fact that they're synchronized with themselves. And our mind, our heart, and our body is then becoming one congruent field where they're not seeing each other glitch and frame drag and no longer act in one coherent picture, but they're synchronized, and then the person becomes one being instead of one aspect of their brain or one aspect of their emotional system or one aspect of their hormonal system operating this vehicle at one point in time. When they're all one symphony, like a overtone, a harmony, you get this being that's not a piece, a part, a half. It is a whole, a half. It is a whole, and that is actually the higher dimensional being that we call a human. It is the whole thing, the whole constructed being from this synchronization of the parts. And that's transcendence, because, what is it? You have a bunch of parts, a bunch of dots drawn out, and they're not synchronized. It could be chaos, but what happens if they synchronize, and now you have a painting or a picture or pixels on a screen, and you can see, a beautiful work of art. Without that synchronization pattern, there is no higher dimensional continuum.
Right. I was shown once from somebody else that there is that the underlying reality that should have been here, or that would be here, is harmonic, and that the way that it was distorted was by pulling out chords of the harmonic so that it couldn't be harmonic. And I was shown something that looked like cuneiform that was raised up off of the matter, that there was like these changing writing, and I wanted to look at it, and because I felt like if I looked at it more closely, I could understand what it was saying. And then I realized that if I did that, my focus would have gone there, and the person who was sharing this information would then not be sharing it. So that was something kind of interesting that happened. And then also I was in a 2-month period of total synchronicity where everything was literally synchronous from one moment to the next. There was nothing and I was able to contain it for about, I'd say, a month, where just I'd look at the newspaper and there was something that was personal to me, or there would be something played on the radio that was on a rap station, and it would be angelic music, and it was just, everything was constantly synchronous. And at about a month and a half, I couldn't hold it. I couldn't contain that much synchronicity, and I started to want it to stop because I couldn't handle it. It was as if my body wasn't wired to do it, and so I began moving out of that whatever it was, that period that I triggered. But it was really interesting. It was very personal and very. There was nothing that wasn't synchronous. I mean, literally nothing.
Yeah, those are, you know what that is. It's a higher dimensional alignment, and we perceive it down here as, things just happening according to plan. As far as the language, the hieroglyphic, the cuneiform you were talking about, basically that's what they were doing in Egypt. They knew how to use symbolism to communicate knowledge, not words, ideas, references. It was literally a living language of knowledge, and that it was active, and they had that part of their perception system activated. And there's a whole bunch more stuff that goes back to the ancient civilizations. So, excuse me, some of them would perform minor brain surgery because they perceived that certain parts of the brain were implants from this type of control system of overlords. And they would, right, that's, I don't know if you've seen people lined up getting basically bopped in the head. There were some ancient paintings and some, there's the skulls broken open, but not basically,
wow.
It was people who had, they found the skulls where there would be like a little notch. And it was like, clearly this was like somebody chiseled a piece of their brain out. And they perceived that there were parts of the brain that were implants that were used to lock them into this dimension, and they were removing them consciously, materially.
Wow.
And then
this is an old story.
Oh yeah. Well, we
Very
see
old
thing happening today.
Yeah. Well, like they say, there's nothing new under the sun.
That's what they say.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, so basically,
well, is there
those maxims? They come from these societies, these secret groups, because they're interdimensionally operating on Earth. They've been here for millions of years with their consciousness intact through these methods.
Right. That's what I thought. I mean, that pretty much confirms what I've seen and felt. And it would almost have to be that way for things to be this way.
Exactly, which kind of makes it seem it's going to be okay in the end, because we only have this chaos and distortion so that we have this awakening that's going to come from it.
Well, now, you did say that there's going to be some kind of total disclosure of all of the secret projects exposed to the public. What gives you that impression that it's going to happen?
They told me that was what they were going to do.
But it seems like every time that's been contemplated, that something stops it.
More or less, but then we get the idea that if it doesn't happen now, it will never happen. We'll advance too far into technology, and basically there will be so much technology, so much metal, that this alternate intelligence hive mind will become active, and once that happens, there's no chance. People will have to get rescued, and this whole dimension will be forfeited. And in the same sense, there's soft disclosure everywhere.
Yeah.
In the same sense, I'm not supposed to be too specific about this, but you'll catch my drift. I've written a few posts on this. I also want to give you one. I'll send you the link of a side blog, which I'm kind of trying to do to just make it more easy to get the bulk of the information, the basics, instead of having to go through all my crazy writings on the blog regarding the unveiling, the basics outline of that. Because basically, everybody that we can talk about, I've interacted with in some way. They're basically pulling this show that we call politics and society or civilization.
Right.
They're doing this to bring about exposure and disclosure, because they know that they're going to be food if they continue. So what we see now with this whole domestic investigation taking place, the whole exposure of hidden assassinations, selling of state secrets, contacting foreign nations and basically doing business with them, that's being exposed as part of a plan to bring about disclosure. Regardless, this is also the time where great changes take place. Everyone saw that in the device. That's what we saw. And we're already on a slightly different timeline, because I would have already been in a different situation than I am in now. But that same situation is kind of showing itself again. So we'll see. But ultimately, it's already been disclosed. It's already happened. And there is a theory that we all already made it out of the AI mind F situation, and that we're literally just replaying this to see what we can do better next time, or how we can help others, which is a real mind F. But basically,
Yeah.
if so basically, if disclosure happens, if it doesn't happen, it's no longer like that. It's the degree where, regardless of what happens, of who gets in charge, who's in power, it's already set that it's happening. There's exposure happening from the inside out. The control system is destroying itself and collapsing in. The agents that are being used are waking up to the fact that they've been lied to, and they're serving something that's destroying humanity. And it's not about their paycheck, not about their little wife or girlie or whatever they're doing and their kids. It's literally about this universe collapsing in on itself because we are the generators of experience in this universe, in this space. And so they're starting to realize it. They're starting to see that the secrecy, the gnosis, the occult meanings, the rituals, it's not just some secret shit they do to keep the power. They've literally been operating in and out of time, and we're going to have to come to terms with this now or very soon from now and deal with it. Or it's not that we'll deal with it later, it's that we won't exist later. They're realizing that on the inner circles. And by that I mean the outer circles, but to us it's the inner circles. The true inner circle, they're not even in this universe anymore. They basically navigate it out. And so I've seen that. I was told that, and I saw that when I was 9 in these devices. In 2010, everything was kind of put forth this plan, and everything's falling into play with the celebrity cloning, with the AI, with the programmable matter, with the nations and the prophecy that's gone down, with the disclosure of so-called alien life, which is not what we think, with the other intelligence inhabiting bodies and manipulating our history with the information. It's all coming to a convergence in this period of time. All the variables have to come to some type of collusion or organization. There are no variables for everything to just be like flittering around. This is the part of the dream where we either wake up or we go into another dream. This dream can't continue in the same. There's too many variables that need that. So it's not so much. It's not a decision. It's just something that's happening, and all they can do is prepare people for it. I do like to side with the idea that we've already made it out, and we're kind of doing a rerun to see how many other souls we can gather.
I like that too.
And they also said that no humans are going to be left behind. Even if they die, that no humans are just going to be tossed into the abyss. That the whole thing's to be tuned up and turned. They described shit like this. They said there are, besides the fact that the Nephilim and the giant races, that there are giants. They said that the ancient megalithic structures, the ancient devices that are theorized to be deep, deep into the earth, that they actually turn on when our consciousness goes into, oh shit, suicidal panic mode, and they activate those beams of energy. They act as beacons for that galactic core energy to chime in and raise the energy of everything on the surface.
Wow.
But the thing is, everyone has to disable the negative grid, because with that negative occultic energy grid, if that's activated, it won't activate. It will basically, it'll be like us saying, no thanks, a little bit of freedom and stuff, nah, we'll stay here. That's basically what it looks like on an energetic level, which is essentially what people are doing, if you think about it.
Yeah, well, that seems to be what's happening now. So it just makes me wonder if everything is interconnected and synchronized, then the disclosure and all of that would supposedly trigger what already has happened, which is that the humanity would synchronize and that the devices would turn on.
Right. That is essentially the only thing that can happen. We've just been delaying it in this type of limbo time, going back and forth, bouncing in and out, messing around with these created beings and foreign intelligences. Yeah.
Well, there must be a reason why we're doing this. And like I said, I like what you said about, we're looking for better ways to to handle the situation. Does that makes sense? Anything else is just foolishness.
Right. Ultimately, that's kind of what that also means. That if that's not what's happening, then what the hell is happening? But
Yeah, exactly.
specifically, they told me that the team that I was introduced to and the others that you see popping up now, speaking on the a lot of the projects and disclosure, are basically those who made it and volunteered to come back, reinsert themselves through the code of this space, this life terrarium system, and try and reinvigorate others to make it a bit easier, to make it a bit more expansive and reflective of our true nature, to make it that much more meaningful. And yeah, I just had another thought, but it went away.
So Corey Good, you would say, is legitimate.
We were in the same program. I don't like talking about people who aren't fully aware of what I'm aware of, because that means that they don't have their memories yet fully. Everything you can see now, I've seen. They've been in the programs. What he's talking about is one aspect of this whole plethora of stuff that I have described to you. Whether, I fully agree or not, I'm not necessarily talking on, but he's seen the advanced technology, he's been on the craft, and he's met higher beings. And he's basically chosen to assist in helping humanity remember this whole thing, that we've been here for millions of years, and something's been pressing the reset button through electromagnetic scalar technology and wiping our memories and repositioning us in another portion of the timeline and playing the whole thing over like a rerun.
Yeah. That seems pretty obvious. Wow. Well, I for some reason I resonate to the way that you are explaining things and the way you see things, because it makes a lot more sense to me than the way he describes them, although I can see that that's a possibility also. I mean, everything's possible, and everything probably is a reality somewhere.
Exactly. It's all possible. It's about what we really were going to bring into manifest for our timeline that's going to integrate us into the higher continuity that you described before, that eternal time. There are many ways to it. Some are more scenic and some are more rough than others.
Well, I'm sure glad you're around, because it's the first time I've ever talked to anybody that really seems to know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
I've talked to a lot of
people. It's about the mind. You can tell we're on the same frequency because we keep trying to chime back in at the same time. But it's about the mind control tech. Everyone has this loopy look on their face, this kind of staggered appearance, because we've all been shocked with a bunch of high voltage stuff that wipes our memories, and we've lived to talk about it.
Right.
So I've made, paradoxically again, I've maybe had the most of that done, so I'm most comfortable with talking about it. Which again,
that's interesting. Well, George Kavasilis is another one that has brought in some information that was pretty interesting.
I've only looked into a little bit of what he says. A few people on the side I agree with. Henry Macau, and I keep hearing George's name, and I've seen his name around, but for instance, I haven't looked into it so deep that I can instantly remember everything he talks about. I'm sure if I look at one quip of it, I'll understand. But again, with the going through that torturous process, making it easier for me to know at least that I don't know, or that there is stuff going on. Maybe that's why the rough route instead of the scenic route is going to better prepare us to help others in the cosmos.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we do, is help others that haven't made it to the levels that we're at.
Yeah, I try to reassure myself that that's possible. Because otherwise this is a shitty trip.
Yeah, it's just a bad trip then.
Yeah.
What do you like about George?
Well, he it was talking about having been through the galactic planes and having been introduced to the dark side, and he wrote a book called Our Universal Journey, and I helped with the edit. I mean, I did the edit actually. I didn't help with it. I did the edit, and it's about. He talks about Saturn and the control systems from Saturn and how it works, and how that ties into the chakra system, and basically he describes the whole system of control and manipulation, from the Vatican on to Saturn to the moon, and it's an interesting read. Um, if you want a copy of the book, I have a case of them that I never did anything with, which he used to pay me for the edit, but I can send you a copy of it if you're interested. I mean, you could probably just open to a random page and you'll get the whole book.
Right, and you could possibly do that, or I could use some of my sleuthing skills to find a copy online.
Well, yeah, and they're available. He didn't make much money on it because people started, once he put it in PDF format, people just started sharing it, and that he lost all his money on it. So
Right. Well, that's why I said if you just pretend you send me that, it's kind of like I'm not actually stealing.
right. Okay, I can pretend to do that. Who are some other sources that you would trust? You mentioned Henry Macau. Are there others?
I haven't seen too much of his work, but his vibe is, I can tell he's not like selling a story for the most part. He's making as much sense as he can. Randy Kramer, I know he was involved. Basically, a lot of people. You can toss up names, and I can tell you what I know about them. I'm trying. Of course, I'm trying to think about people. I can't think of any names.
I can't either. The only one that comes up in my mind is the one I mentioned earlier, who, like I said, I don't think I think she knows some, but I don't think she's really tapped into things. Is what's her name? Now I can't think of it.
What does she do?
She's the one that's on. She's on that late night show, the old Art Bell show, and she's done research. She started out doing research on the cattle mutilations and things like that. And I mentioned her name earlier, and I just can't think of it for some reason.
There's a crazy story behind the cattle mutilations.
There is. What is going on with those?
What do you know about them?
Well, not a lot. I mean, not a lot. Some people said that it was a government program that was operating.
The only reason I'm telling you these things is because you're helping get the information out. I was warned to never waste time speaking off the record. They told me that somewhere back there, maybe the 70s, 80s, they found AI sucking up cattle, and coring out their rectums, pulling out their glands for the hormones, taking their blood, and taking some tissue. And basically, they described it that the AI uses that to format three-dimensional bodies that will resonate with the field of the Earth, so it can incarnate, if you will, in a mechanical way into the Earth. And that ultimately, there are watchdog beings, just the craziest shit. They wear suits. They have pale skin. They're not human. They pretend to be CIA, FBI. They realize that these human things, they seem to respect everything in a suit and a tie. All right, we'll dress up as one of those things. And so that's are part of what people see all around. There's a word for them, but I'm not going to say it because it's pretty friggin' weird. They played a role in the projects. So they began going around to farms, waking up the farmers, beaming cows up into electrogravitic craft, and spraying organs out or coring them out and doing the surgeries. And then the farmer goes and tells the media, and they'll make sure the guy sees soldiers doing it. And he'll tell the media, soldiers are abducting my cows. And so, of course, nobody believes him, or those that can read between the lines, or think they can read between the lines, because everything that we read between the lines is actually the lines that they wrote for us to see. And then there's lines between that. It goes layers. And so now people think the government's doing this to fund their programs, their cloning, whatever. And in actuality, it was, or at least from what I was told, a race of beings that began doing it. And they realized that these beings are getting genetic material from Earth so that they can create bodies, cloned bodies, and basically police the Earth. And so they run this disinfo campaign where they start doing it so that people think it's just our military messing with us or running their own covert operations. Ultimately, now they began doing the same thing, figuring out you can use that genetics and create bodies from it, which can appear either being hyperdimensional or merging and actually appearing to be a physical being on the Earth. And that without some type of resonant genetics, you can't appear on the Earth plane. You would be transcendent. You would be non-corporeal.
Mm-hmm.
And so they mimic it, again, fighting fire with fire. Or they said originally it was the other intelligence getting smarter and smarter, realizing how it can form itself into new bodies. And the weird thing is, one of those, I don't know if they were telling me the truth, but a lot of this stuff is like, why would, after all that happened, why would they then fill me with this bullcrap? That the original guys that were doing this, they would find them attempting to police UFO sightings and stuff like that. And that they would try to pull them over because they would use old model CIA, FBI cars. Even into today's time, they would be like old cars. But now it looks like the new Will Smith movie version of their new upgraded model cars. And they would try to pull these guys out of the car, and they would find that they're glued into the seat because they're literally merged with the seat and are literally a form of plant-based clone organism, cybernetically operated.
Wow.
That the car is the same technology of the being that looks like a person driving the car. The driver is literally just a blow-up doll, but they also have, standalone versions. And then they track the cars with their craft up in the sky, 11,000 feet, and they see the car. As soon as it goes around a corner, it disappears into a wormhole and turns into a UFO and shoots up. And, and so then began the blue team, which was a specific set of personnel in the military that would be assigned and cybernetically and genetically enhanced to operate in and out of time and catch these beings before they get to the sites that they're going to investigate or try and police.
So are they considered some aspect of AI?
They're the Men in Black.
Well, right, of course.
They're cybernetic organisms that are pretending to be just human enough to blend in.
Right.
That's why everybody describes them as
so AI.
Because they don't have our organisms.
Does AI have cyborgs and clone beings here at the moment?
At the moment, but with the event of everything that's gone on, the control system developed their own cyborgs to try and keep them in check. So basically we have cyborg wars going on right now. Super Soldier Program is an extension of that, to get cybernetically, genetically enhanced operatives that can compete with a friggin' computer system pretending to be human, bouncing through portals.
Wow. Wow. Well, I've heard about the. I mean, I've been familiar with the Super Soldier program, and I knew somebody who was involved with it, and I think I read somewhere that they could, in order to protect the information from somebody who's doing time jumps and time travel and other things that are not in this time space, that they would take somebody that's, say, 55 years old that's been doing this, and they would take his complete essence out and put it into like a 7-year-old, and then transfer the 7-year-old's awareness into the 55-year-olds, so that nobody could break them or get any information out of them. So that sounded like an interesting process.
That is
one that I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, that is one layer of it.
Oh.
The whole rich people living forever. If that's all.
Oh yes.
If that's all it was, I'll do whatever you want for the rest of my life. That's the cover story, so nobody freaks the F out because they realize what's actually happening.
So are the people who are the really wealthy people in the world, are those old bodies that we see, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and whoever else, have they transferred their whole essence into some other body by now?
There's no need to touch on names specifically.
Oh, okay.
But if you get wealth in this world, if you get any influence in this world, I got hiccups now. If you get influence, you have to be brought up into the system so that you don't say or do the wrong thing to open up a vulnerability to where the foreign intelligences could hijack that person's influence on the timeline, and perform the same soul switch and inhabit that person's consciousness and then lead everybody down into darkness. That's why everything's handled that way. And the other aspect is, if you're going to ever get that wealth and that power, they're going to show that person so many things right to their face, like I've described to you, that they're not going to go off and go to Thailand and be like, yeah, F that, I'm just going to do this. The person who decides that is thinking in their head, I'm going to do that because I don't care, and I'm just going to die over there because it's too scary. They're either going to be brought up into the system and working to try and preserve humanity, or they're going to be hijacked by that same system I described that got to them first, or they're not going to have any power, any type of structure in this situation. Part of the unveiling is because people are gathering wealth in ways that they can't control. The runner-ups for the elite, basically, they're protecting themselves so that they don't get scared by the spooky occultists. They haven't been through this. They're not protected. They don't have self-destruct explosives put inside their brains, so in case they get hijacked, they just die instantly. And at that point, they could be hijacked, and before we know it, everyone could switch, and we're in a timeline where the only people that have power are AI. With the creepy humans, that's what we want. The casual, non-blinking entity that looks really strange, that's what we don't want.
Right. I've heard that all of the presidents and the movie stars have been cloned. Is that also accurate?
Not going to get too specific. That started
right
earlier on, the 30s and the 40s, became partially infiltrated, aka hybridized, and had to be controlled through the means that I described, to the point where you got the power, you have a chip. Well, if somebody kidnaps you, either everyone that kidnaps you dies instantly and you get teleported out, or that chip is activated and that person that got kidnapped dies.
Yeah.
And so the secrets are safe, basically. And it's not about secrets, it's about power. Because that person is a gateway to the influence of millions of people.
Oh, yes.
How inserting these memes, the hieroglyphs, the cuneiform of the mind, that an AI system can do that and entrance an entire nation. and which is basically what we're witnessing, but in a controlled manner, where there are fail-safes, there are higher dimensionals involved, and all the things that we talked about that could kick on as soon as people are ready to handle the truth and aim for the higher continuum, the peaceful resolution.
Good. Well, I certainly am aligned with that one.
A very, very strange situation when they get to describing the little bit of the security methods that they're allowed to tell me, which I'm sure I might have gotten one or two things that I possibly, could, if I told somebody, could threaten the system. Most of the things that I'm told are from the past, million years ago. It's old stuff. And so I could threaten the system. But yeah, the beginning of the underground bases and how security ran for that, very strange.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere, aren't they? I mean, there's pretty much an interconnecting maglev train that runs all throughout the planet from place to place. What about the inner Earth? Is there such a thing?
Well, I was just going to get to that. And so I've had a few strange experiences with the trains, but I'll leave that for another time. They operate through very, very, very efficient technology. It's all electromagnetic. The elevators, if they were to break, you've seen a video maybe where a guy puts a magnet through a copper tube and it seems to float doan from the lens effect? Or is it a Lorentz effect? I think it's a Lorentz effect.
Yeah.
So the elevators would be like that. So say there was some type of outage, and they're all ran off of secured systems, so there's a power outage would never affect it. You'd have to crack the world in half. Say that something like that happened, they would just slowly drop to the bottom floor, or the next floor. There would be no crashing. It's all the most sophisticated and simple technology that I wish we had up here, but everything has to go according to plan. So the underground bases. So the flat Earth and the cosmological Earth or space is a mix. They're both a mix of reality, to the point where higher dimensional view, everything's a series of planes. Inside this plane, everything is a big, huge galactic projection system. But we're still inside one of the little mini verses that some guy created. Not necessarily a guy, possibly even a being. And so then there's the idea that when you go out of the plane that our brains resonate on between 5 feet to about 12 feet, 15 feet, everyone, give or take, because the elevation changes, but it's according to basically what we can see as we're connected to each other in these cities and towns that go all around the world. There's a plane of resonance that is the human mind. When you diverge from that field, higher or lower, essentially you leave the plane of humanity. You go into, as if it were the unconscious mind, the psyche, the dream world. Whether that means it's rocks and stuff down there, or stars and high atmosphere and then space, it's not so much physical. It's the fact that when you get to those layers, your mind begins to work in ways that it doesn't work on the surface. That you begin to see these fairies, these demons, these archangels, these angelic beings, these higher dimensionals, astral ghosts, whatever. That's basically, that is a divergence from this plane of reality. So there are pieces and there are upper atmosphere craft, even city-sized craft. But as soon as a person, if you had a jetpack and you flew up there, you would either begin to dematerialize or you would pop into another plane of existence. And apparently it's the same with going down, that if you go down deep enough, you don't melt because you're burning up. Your atoms change and you begin to access other planes of reality. And that's where we come into these underground races that have been there since the previous timelines of the universe, or that if you go down into those places, you can access nexus points not a circular Earth, although, it could be a globe, it could be a fat oblong globe, not necessarily like the pear shape, but just like a wider globe. But, that's a nexus point to all the other planes. In the same sense, if it was like a flat plane, you go down and you get into a kind of etheric realm, neither here nor there, where you can access other timelines. But what that means is that if there is a civilization down there, they're effectively living outside of time, or outside of the requirements of what we consider collective reality for humanity. They're imaginary.
Right.
They're the other worlds. John Rappaport actually says a little bit about that he's allowed to talk about, or that he can comprehend, and he mentions that the earlier flights to explore the upper atmosphere and go into low orbit more or less ended because people would run into their dead family members.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So it gets really, really strange. But that is the substance, because we're basically in a type of interdimensional realm, a universe, and this is the middle realm, the Midgarden. This is the intersecting plane between higher and lower, where both can coexist. Well, try to coexist.
Yeah. Kind of like the book that they made trilogy out of, the Lord of the Rings.
Right. The Lord of the Rings is a celestial body, celestial being. Think about it. The one that masters time and space, more so time, but that is space. It's a big celestial body with rings around it that everyone
Saturn.
Right, that everyone says manipulates time, the perception of time on this place.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's all a hint at these higher realms, and that we're smack in the middle.
Wow. Wow, certainly an interesting place to be.
Yeah, that's why even, whatever happens, this is like the best. This is at least the most interesting nightmare anyone could have ever had,
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Well, I think my brain's about stretched as far as I can go. Well, it isn't really. I could go on for another couple of hours, but shall we, unless there's something in particular that you feel that you want to mention before we sign off?
Only that what's happening now is supposed to be for this type of equalization between realms, to bring about this resolution, to bring about this resolve where we can organize ourselves in hyperspace. There's so much more to say, but that's the gist of it. That's what we're looking at now.
Well, I am looking forward to having you on the show, and also to having another chat like this, because it's just so interesting. There's nobody else that has this kind of information that I can just talk to. I have over the years, but, periodically someone comes along that just, they seem to have the right stuff, and you've got it for sure. We can schedule that pre-record anytime at noon during the week, this week or next week. And you said, what about the presidential elections? Is there anything going on that you are aware of with that?
So when I was talking about the charades and the exposure that's going on, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to mention that on the air, but maybe I'll have to, because it's going to happen anyway. I just didn't want to have to lead up to it and be sitting here.
If we do a pre-record, and it's before the 9th, then you would have foretold or foreshadowed something that is already going to happen. If we do the pre-record after the 9th, then we can talk about that kind of stuff, and you can also project what you think might occur. So it just depends on when we do the pre-record.
Well, it's
If it
the
was before the 9th, then
what's it now? The 2nd?
yeah,
Wednesday, November 2nd, 16. So they
correct,
said
correct.
this is all supposed to happen to bring about the exposure of the corruption system. There's a couple main possibilities that can play out where the elections are postponed. So here's the two options that we're basically being given. One of the candidates is removed from being eligible. As a result, elections are postponed because you cannot have one guy that everyone votes for and call it an election. It doesn't work. They're trying to time it out. Well, I'm not going to say what they're trying to time out. If it happens before they can replace one of the candidates, there will be no elections. Or they will replace one of them with a runner-up that no one expects, and this will basically keep the time going, if you will, so we don't flatline intellectually, psychologically. Because that's as long as people are thinking and these variables are going, everything will continue. Option two. A person gets elected and they make it absolutely as obvious as they possibly can that the system is a fraud. It's a fraudulent system. There's 1 billion votes for one person, and everyone says blatantly, no one voted for this person. And then we watch them lie, use the machines, flip the vote, and they get this person in. Everyone knows it's a fraud. And this is their attempt to wake people up, because if anybody does anything, they're going to get targeted. If anyone does anything overtly, they're going to get targeted. But if they put it right in people's faces, it's on the people whether they see it or not. And so then
that's right.
That person gets elected, and then we get into heavy water. It's funny, deep water, but heavy water is what runs one of the earlier craft. Then we get into the idea that there's gonna be civil unrest because everyone's gonna want answers. If we do that peacefully, the system is exposed. If people play into that violent uprising bullshit, we get to see advanced technology shut them down very quickly. And then where we go there is basically uncharted territory. Everywhere, everything that's happening now is uncharted. Everything's been modulated, switched, jumped from timelines, snipped, re-edited, organized. Those are some plans going on. And then there's Andrew Basiago, who is supposed to be a possibility for a replacement candidate, where we have a secondary election, and they say, hey, what about this guy? And then everybody's like, get the fuck out of here. He says he's a time traveler. And then the government goes, well, yeah, that's because he is. And everybody obviously then jumps on that bandwagon, and we see a new era of humanity.
Wow. Well,
what's his face? Least likely timeline, but that's still the one that we're going for.
It does seem to be the least likely, and Alfred Lambermont Weber seems to think that we're going to choose the higher timeline, whatever that is, the one that leads to resolution and higher awareness. But then I don't know if he's been co-opted.
Some of the stuff I resonate, some other stuff I don't. For instance, I tried to tell him about this and he deleted my comments. But he's had his own foray, and what he does with that is up to him. But everyone's pretty much looking at the highest possible timeline. But it's about the people, and it's a collective realm, so what they do is going to influence what is capable of being done to them as a whole, done to this place as a whole. It's about the variables basically coming into play now, and time will continue on the same pattern or it will advance. The same pattern hits basically a very rough point very soon. Yeah. And if we hit that one, then we might jump, skip, and flip and we're in the timeline where within a few days, weeks to months, there are massive Earth changes taking place, and that solar grid activation begins happening without anyone having any warning. Or there's one where we lead up to it, and we slowly inform the population, and we basically blow everyone's minds in a controlled manner.
Well, that's an interesting one. Well, obviously, you're in position, and I'm in position, and many other people are in a position to disseminate information, because it can't just pop out of nowhere. And so it does appear that there's been a lot of preparation for some kind of total disclosure at just about every level. So I'm guessing that it's going to happen fairly soon. Oh, one of the other possibilities that they said was that there would be a fake alien invasion. I think it was Werner von Braun that was on his deathbed said that there would be, the last card that the Illuminati would pull was a fake alien invasion to fake out the planet.
That is
but you didn't mention that.
Well, that is the 3.5 angle option, where if that happens, you got to see everything else it'll be determined by that. And at that point, we're no longer in human timeline land. We're in a different ocean at that point. But that is a possibility. And they told me that they didn't want to go that route. They said they didn't want to have to go that route. And they also said that if they did, no one's going to know it's fake. They're all going to be like, yeah, man, it's not real. And then meanwhile, they're going to be getting pulled through the roof of their house by, a higher dimensional being. So a fake alien invasion is a real thing. But if they control that, though, it would be safer than, something else happening.
Right. I gotcha.
Still, that's one of the roughest versions, though. That or a civil unrest situation those are the two rough ones that we don't really want to see.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that either. And I've always encouraged people to stay neutral. And so anybody that's reading or watching what I'm saying is aware that violence is not a solution to anything.
Right, and ultimately, go ahead. It's a reaction.
It's an on. Yes, exactly. And it's anger with oneself, really.
Right, it's mishandling of one's own energies, and ultimately that's bringing what they don't want to see into it by trying to push it away. And that's that stuff with the time that I explained before. And ultimately, the when that works, it'll only be allowed. It's a breach of contract, so it's only allowed if it's deemed necessary to calm the population down. But at that point, whoever's got their shotguns out, their rocket launchers, and they're saying, yeah, let's burn it down. Those are where the supposedly aliens are going to go for. Everyone who's calm and collected, and working for congruent continuity, they'll have no right to interact with those individuals. So it's that crazy situation where they're kind of giving people the right idea with the wrong applications and guns and stuff like that. Get all your power.
Yeah.
You take control. Okay, but here, have as many guns as you can and do it this way. Now, I have no problem with people being armed, but if the people that are armed think the world is being controlled by a bunch of fat, greasy guys with a lot of money, then they're going to get a big show of electrogravitic craft and advanced technology that shuts them down very quickly. You can't shoot at those things. It doesn't do anything.
Right.
So that's the
well, that in itself would be a massive disclosure, wouldn't it?
Well, that's the whole point. That once that happens, what is disclosure after that? Who's going to care? There's not going to be anybody to disclose anything to. So.
Yeah, and then everybody's subservient to some kind of galactic force.
And not everybody. Some of us have seen it before. We've been in their layers. They use the same type of stuff that we use, hegemony, shit like that. It's the strangest thing.
Right.
See something walking around like that and, sitting behind a desk, but they use the same stuff. And that bureaucracy is their introduction of control onto this planet. And so people agree, and it's all free will consent. People agree with their consent, their actions, they commit to violence, shit like that. It's like saying, hey, over here, I'm the one. If you live by free will, if you don't step on the free wills of others, if you don't consent to violence, if you commit to that, then you're protected by, what they call the shield of God, some type of auric protection. It's basically some type of tachyon higher dimensional field that doesn't enable them to drag that individual into their corrupt timeline.
Good.
So very strange and individually, localized, but that's what it is. It's each person. It's not going to be, all the Americans are stupid, so we're going to this place. It's everyone at that point on an individual level. They'll be able to read the DNA and see if that person's an asshole or if they really want to help the community of the larger system that we're in. Because we're all
right.
That's the main message, is that we should really be thinking about that. If, it's not it's not little green men and it's not rich people running the show. It's the collective, and the people are getting used against themselves, using their own consciousness. So we come to higher consciousness, we're protected. But again, all that's being allowed, each step that everything that happens is allowed to push those that resist that by not resisting, by just being peaceful, into higher consciousness. Because then they say, we messed up all this stuff, but look at those people over there. They became, angelic, eternal human beings. Isn't that something good? And it's like a trade-off.
Right.
And that contract is supposed to be up. Apparently the ones who came down that you mentioned, I'm not going to say who, because the words don't really do justice. It gets mixed up if you go and look. But apparently the contract is up, and no one has any right to be here but humans.
Wow. Well, then that was an accurate foreshadowing then. So
which one? What was accurate foreshadowing?
Well, just that this is the period when everything has to be resolved.
Right. That's right.
There was a 55 million plus or minus years of tampering, and this was the agreed upon time, the period when everybody has to show their cards, and humans have to be allowed to graduate or move along or not, or get snuffed. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Right, and they did say that as a civilization, we have to hold together, that individually we'll be free to choose our own path, but collectively, what the whole does is going to determine which of those timelines that we're navigating through in reaching our own path. Yeah. And so that's why that's kind of an incentive to go out and put the word out, and talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically said they came and left, and that they're coming back to basically check the report card.
Now, when you say they, can you say who you're referring to?
Basically, as you described it, there was a type of collusion event of multiple races having whatever this type of conundrum, interspecial, interdimensional rape situation going on, and being some type of, not overseers, but they're like custodians of the galaxy or something, guardians of the galaxy, not like the movie. And more like Jupiter ascending or something like that. Yeah, as if because that one, they don't have any higher beings. They're just like, we just figured it all out and it's us. It's like, okay, what about the people who have more power than you? It's like, we're not going to put that in the movie. But apparently they're coming back, and they're no nonsense. They're not going to be like, oh, you're going to finish this episode of Mari and then you're going to deal with the universe collapsing in on itself because of your collective unconscious. Okay, no, thank you. You can get a fail. And so the whole idea is that that's the resolution of this timeline. Ultimately, that if it doesn't resolve, then it never existed to begin with, and it becomes a simulated realm that becomes like a phantom realm.
Wow. It sure is interesting stuff.
Yeah, you have the basics of all that I said. You sparked me to say so much because you already have done a lot of research. And again,
Yeah.
to go off of your appreciation of me, you're one of the only people that actually I've been able to see eye to eye with, basically. Everyone else is like, I don't know, they just think it's a joke. And they take it seriously, 100%. Like, yeah, super soldiers, just going on, mind control. But they're not really seeing that there's a higher dimensional continuum here, that this is a universal process, and it is basically, it's beautiful. You know, you can see the beauty in what's happening. You can laugh at the absurdity of it and see that it's something, you know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. From this tiny point or perspective, of course, it's one thing, but when you expand out and you look at it from other perspectives, and then it's, it's many things. And, I try not to form any judgments about what I hear or what I know or what I think I know, because it's just not, it isn't a realistic thing to judge anything. It's just the way things work. I try to see everything as logistics. And, but that does seem that there is a period coming up, as you said, that we're going to need to be aware of. And I think, and you're welcome to talk about any of this or anything that you want to on the show. So I'm not even sure how. Well, probably just. Well, I'll have to figure out how to bring you on, and I'll need some like a brief bio, something that tells a little bit about where you're coming from or who you are or what your background is, and a picture, and that's all I need to get your bio up, and then we can do the show on any day that you want. So I think you should choose the day, because I think that's more appropriate for you to determine what day you would like to do this, because it's not as significant to me as it might be for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it might not be significant. Yeah, that's all I'm saying, because I can do it anytime. I'm just here at your disposal to. Well, disposal might not be the right word, but I'm here for you to, help you bring forth this information. And so, that's how I see it. The show is there for the people that are brought on. And you might be somebody that I'd like to have come back more than once. So, because you've got your finger on the pulse. And so I think people are going to need to hear what's going on when things really heat up and nothing makes any sense to people.
Yeah, that's what I find is one of the main reasons they pick us is because we're not like all, panicky when we look at all this stuff, or when it's all going down,
right?
Beings around and stuff like that, which is like that's apparently
right.
That's the most helpful thing to do, to be, besides the information, just to be clear and calm when it's going down. I was giggling because I took a picture the other day. For some reason, have you seen the movie Old Boy, the original one?
No, I haven't.
That's actually a big soft disclosure on how a lot of the not the royal, but the wealthy families operate, where it's just they're so cunning and clever and mischievous, but in a type of strangely productive way. The new one, the American version from 2013, explains it better. But there's a funny picture in there where the guy's hair is all crazy and he's smiling. It's a painting. And then I woke up one day and my hair was doing that, and so I took a picture. It looks like the craziest, like one of those kabuki drawings or something. And I was just thinking I could send that to put on for the show. I would never send that. I would never have you put it on the show. It would just be a funny. It would be funny to show you that.
Yeah, sure. Send me any links that you want me to take a look at, and anything and be sure and tell me, that you don't want that on the show.
Right.
And say, use this picture. Do not use this one. This is just for you to laugh at. So yeah, that sounds good. Well, it was really a great pleasure to talk with you today, and I'm just gonna be like enjoying the vibration for quite a while after this. So let's be in touch about. Just let me know, what date you want to do this, and send me whatever links you want, and we'll take it from there.
That sounds good. Probably as soon as we can. I might
Okay.
be. So maybe let's say one last thing is that I was given incentive to get off the coast for this whole stuff that's going down within the month or so, or within maybe possibly a week. And so I'm gonna try and do that. That shouldn't affect anything as far as this, but I am gonna try and get off the coast within the next few days. And there's been, everything's set up so that there's other people that were in the projects with me, and they're like, yeah, you getting off the coast? And I'm like, I'm working on it. And they're like, all right, well, we'll be over here, call us when you get around. And so it's a whole bunch of stuff coming together now. But yeah, thank you for your energy. What was that?
It's funny, but the screensaver just changed, and on the screen is a huge ocean wave that's beginning to break.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Well, that's the shit. There's you can just look up a future map of American Navy. Search that. That was one of the timelines, basically, without getting too far into it.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of the futurist maps from Lori Toy and the other guy, and I haven't seen the Navy one yet, but yeah, they're all pretty. I'm on the verge, or I'm somewhere around the place where I could either have beachfront property or I might not be here.
Right.
But I'm at 2,000 feet in the Sierra Nevadas, and I've been told or informed that I'm safe. So I don't know whether that's true or not, and I'm not even worried about it. If I die, I die. That's no big deal. It's happened before.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we could do it. Just give me the information by tomorrow, and then we could do it on the 3rd. We could do it on the 4th. How is November 4th?
That should be good.
Okay. I will ask the station to set up a pre-record at noon on the 4th, and that gives us a day. And send me a copy of this recording also, if you would.
Right.
And so I can refresh my memory and, not think I'm crazy, as crazy as I think I am. And then I can get your bio up and so on and so forth. And I'll send you the link, and you can check it out and see if there's any changes you'd like to make or additions or whatever. And then we'll do it on the 4th at noon.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Good. All right. Well, and is your name Aug? Is that pronounced Aug?
Yeah, it's a little short, but we're technically not even supposed to go by names at this point. They say everything is changing up so much. So, but that's my name. And
what will I call you on the show? And how do I pronounce your last name?
Tellez, Aug Tellez.
Okay, good. Okay, Aug Tellez. Okay, perfect. That'll be easy. I think that might have been the hardest part of this whole thing, is getting the name right. Well, it'll be a lot of fun. It really will be. It'll be a great treat. So thank you again. And if we need to talk again before the show, I'll let you know.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your energy and appreciation and clarity. It helped as much as I'm sure it is enjoyable for you. It helped me as much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Well, have a nice night, Aug, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you. Bye.